I have a coffee, this may be a good thing or a bad thing. January was a pretty good reading month. It was a really good start to the year, really solid. I was able to read most of the books that I drew from my jars. You'll see in a moment which ones those were. I had one that was off TBR, and that's fine. And then I had one that I just didn't finish. You already saw that one. That was the Hod King. I put it back in the jar. I didn't have any time to do that. One thing that I'm noticing right now is that I don't have the space or time to read physically. Most of the books that I've been reading have been either ebook or audiobook, and I think that's just the way that my life is made up right now. I finished the A Fire Endless book duology that is A River Enchanted and A Fire Endless. I kind of mentioned this in my other one. I really enjoyed the first one. And then this second one just really fell flat for me. And I'm not sure if that's because I listened to it as opposed to reading it, or if I just had lost interest from the characters or from the story plot or whatever. There was just something that did not engage me with this last one. It was good. It has a really high rating. And I think the reason for that is the romance. And that's the part that I just kind of, it was like, for me. So this is a story about I wanted to say a bard. He's essentially a bard. He's a musician. He leaves his home island. He goes away to university. He trains as a musician. He comes back, and then he gets embroiled in kind of, I guess, like an island civil war between two clans. And this one is following him and his wife as they figure out political things. As a musician, I like to see when authors do their research, and it just felt like this had a lack of music. For the main character being a musician, there was a lack of music, and I was really sad about that. So this was a 3 stars for me. My next 3-star book was called Greylorn, and this is by Keith Lomer. I had read a short story of his that I absolutely adored in Dangerous Visions, and I thought I'd try something else by him. This book taught me that I don't like military sci-fi. So the story goes that Greylorn is this captain of this ship, and they're going to go and talk with some of the colonies. I can't remember the complete plot. It's been a while. It's the middle of February and January is long gone. He has to take this crew out, and he's dealing with a crew that rebels and tries to have a mutiny, and it's all about his like leadership and his wiseness and how like great of a human being he is and how wonderful he is, and it was fine. This reminded me a lot of a Sherlock Holmes story where Watson is kind of bumbling along, and then Sherlock manages to solve the mystery, and then it's not until the end of the page that he reveals all of the background and the like, oh, I saw the fingerprints on the and I noticed that the hem of his pants was and that's a little bit what Greylorn was like. It ended, and then there was an epilogue, and then it was like this big reveal, and I think it was unnecessary. So that was a 3 stars for me. My next 3 stars was Hemlock Island. I probably could have expected this, but at the same time, I had so much fun with this one. So yes, there's Hemlock, and it's an island, and it's this woman who has this B&B, like Airbnb, cabin that's hers, and the only way for her to keep it is to rent it out to people. And her number of her clients have started complaining about weird things happening, like finding ritualistic things, circles, symbols, blood in the closet, like creepy stuff. And I thought this was going to be like a straight up horror, which it kind of is. This would definitely be a really good scary movie. And if you're looking for like a really creepy, fun book to get into in the spooky season, this is definitely a fun one. It reads super quickly, And it was just, it was fun. It was a 3-star for me because I didn't really enjoy the reveals, but in the end, I couldn't stop. I just had a lot of fun with this one. So if you're looking for a fun one, try this one. The next two are my 4-star reads of the month. And the first one was Old Man's War by John Scalzi. This was on it's my top 10 books to read of the year. It is part of my classic science fiction list. And I was looking forward to this one because it's also got a super duper high rating. I've heard nothing but good stuff about it, and I really did enjoy this one. I loved it. This was funny. I was not expecting. My poor husband, I'm reading this in bed, and I'm just chuckling at all of the things, the absurdities that are happening. It's so funny. That was an unexpected delight. On the flip side, because of me realizing Greylorn, I didn't like military, the back half of the book ended up being quite military focused. And because I had made that discovery, it was like, oh no, I'm not going to love this book as much. It's still really enjoyable. I just don't like that military bit. And that's why it was a 4 stars and not a 5 stars. This one reminded me a lot of Ender's Game in that it starts out with the main character leaving Earth and going through training and figuring out what the new world is like through training. This book also made me cry a lot because the main character, okay, here's the plot. When you turn 75, on your 75th birthday, you have the option of staying on Earth or going and joining colonial defense forces out in outer space. And you basically get recruited, and there's a lot of rumors as to what happens. Like maybe they make you younger, or maybe they make your body feel like it's good again. And I'm not going to like really reveal that because that's kind of part of the joy of learning as he goes. But because he's 75, he's lived a whole life and he's lost his wife. The first chapter had me bawling because of the way he spoke about his wife. And there were multiple times about in his chat throughout the book where he speaks about the grief that he still feels for his wife. He may be in a totally new space, but that doesn't mean that his life before didn't happen. And I really appreciated the tenderness that John Scalzi placed upon that particular aspect. This was fun. I have now since recommended this to a lot of my friends, and I'm going to be lending this out very shortly because this is going to be one of my top sci-fi reads for most people. So this is 4 stars for me. My next 4-star read was Moon of the Turning Leaves, and I think this one has been sold incorrectly. The first book, Moon of the Crested Snow, is apocalyptic. Something's happened. They're on this reserve and they're not sure what's happened. The power's gone out and they're trying to survive the winter. That part, plus being invaded by some outsiders, makes that book, it's also very short, makes that book thriller-like aspect. This one moves a lot more slowly. So I would like to say that this one has been marketed as a thriller, and I don't believe that it is. I believe this is more of a love letter to the nature of Northern Ontario, the area in which this is set. There is a lot of care and attention placed upon describing the landscape and the plants and the nature and the animals. And I think that's really important to understand when you go in. There are exciting parts and there are thrillery things that happen. And there's this underlying ominous feeling, but the author spends a lot more time gently, lovingly talking about how humans, especially where they go back to the Anishinaabe traditions of how they lived off the land and how they survived. So this is following the same character, Evan, several years later. And the other thing that I think this book does very beautifully is this is between Evan and his daughter. And I want to say her name correctly. I'm not going to say it correctly, so I'm not even going to try. This is also an exploration of a father and a daughter. And that part was beautiful. I really loved this one, and I would highly recommend it. If you loved Moon of the Crusted Snow, go into this one knowing that it's a lot more slow and a lot more reverent, and I think you'll really enjoy this one. On to my 5 stars. Okay, first book I read of the year, Whale Fall. Whale Fall is the one where it is a scuba diver who gets swallowed by a whale and has to get out. It's a very simple story. You think you've probably read it before. It is compared to The Martian, and I'm not sure why, other than the fact that it's a person surviving. Like, okay. The main critique that I saw was people didn't like the idea that the main character was going through a lot of, like, they basically said he has daddy issues. And I would like to disagree that I think that's too simple. I think this is a big metaphor for grieving someone that you have a very complicated relationship with. They are possibly toxic to you. I think that's what this author was trying to do. Whether or not it worked for some people, clearly not. It worked for me because the chapters were super duper short. They were like 1 or 2 pages, 2, 3 pages. Like, it moved at a clip, and it was interspersed in between the like memories of him and his father was the one who taught him scuba diving, and then him scuba diving and then subsequently getting swallowed by the whale. So it was this big, like, interweaving, very fast, and I think it only works because it was so fast. If there had been long chapters about him and these memories of him and his father and how horrible his father was to him, but also loving how he was to him, or like, it wouldn't have worked. Because it was so short, it did work. And that's why I really liked this one, because it read quickly, it was fun, it was wild, you go for the ride. I do believe this is a metaphor, and I really enjoyed that exploration. So this was 5 stars for me. Great way to start the new year. Oh man, the next one, another 5 stars, was The Last Quintista. I knew this was gonna be good, but I didn't know it was that good. So this is about a girl who's been, I guess her family is like won this lottery of, okay, so the world's coming to an end. There's a meteor that's going to hit the earth, and then they only have like 2 or 3 ships that they can whisk people away on. And her family wins this lottery. So they board this ship. The idea was that they're going to get fed all this information, all this education while they're sleeping. There will be other people who are looking after them. And then when they wake up 200 years later, they're going to reach their destination of a new world that's in the Goldilocks zone. And they are going to carry on humanity. Of course, that doesn't go right. And this one is sad, but in a heavy way, but it's also hopeful in a heavy way. And I really appreciated that idea. It also covered the idea of how an ideology can transform over the years. And this is going to be a recommendation for my niece next time I see her. Incredible. 5 stars. It's a middle grade. But like, if you're into science fiction and kind of generation shifts, I recommend this one. All right, that's it. I read 7 books in January, and I like, that's great. Like, that's way more than I expected. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Karen. I'm the Book Libraut, and we'll see you again soon. Bye. I did start the Shahnameh, and I'm like barely into it. So, like, I'm not even gonna like tell you too much about that.